Okay, well, we got a few minutes before we get started, but I just thought I would open it up early so y'all can make sure everything's sounding okay and that you've got, you can get into the chat and all that. I'm going to make sure that I've remembered, I sometimes forget to do this, make sure this is live on the old Facebook. So I'm going to make sure about that. Let's see. It's one of the sort of boring housekeeping things I need to make sure of. It's unlisted. Make this public. Okay. Good. Now we're live. All right. All right. Nice to see some familiar folks. And if you're new or you haven't been to the live stream before, drop a note in the chat and let me know. Just maybe tell us a little bit about why you're here and what you hope to learn in the next hour, what you're working on, anything like that. If that's too invasive, just tell us what guitar you're playing. Everybody wants to know that. So what we're going to do today is just talk about these three things you can work on to improve your fingerstyle playing. If you've been following the channel for a while or you're in the Fingerstyle 5 membership, you probably know these things because I talk about them a lot. But if you're not familiar with any of that and you're just showing up for the first time, hopefully this will be helpful and help you figure out a little bit more about what to work on when you sit down to practice, instead of just maybe working on the things that you already work on, or instead of maybe just sort of playing the stuff you already know, maybe these things can help you kind of dial it in a little more, get a little more specific about what you're working on. Oh, look at this. We got some guitars. 57 Harmony Sovereign. Very cool. Eastman. Nice. I don't know the 10D, but I'm sure it's cool. 58 Martin 0017. Hear that, honey? That's your cousin. This is a 56 0018. I love those. The 017, I think that's still spruce top, but it just doesn't have the binding or something like that. Alan, working on Nobody's Fault But Mine. All right. Is that from the 8-bar blues PDF? James. Yes. Hey there. I know you. Converting songs from flat pick to a finger picked 0018. Nice. Waterloo. All right. Yeah, those are nice guitars. Man, look at all these double O's. 0017 from 1954. Excellent. All right. Well, we got more. 0017, it's all mahogany. Okay. I thought that was the 15s, but a 49 0021. Dang, you guys have some cool guitars. That's great. Some Taylors, excellent. 48 00. Oh, Ehrlichman. How's it going, man? 0018. Tony, yeah, and Tony, I got your note about the tab. Yes, thank you. I'm going to fix that. What about it? 00C. About to start the Fingerstyle 5. All right. Jim, excellent. I'm working on some John Hurt. 78 D35. 2017 OM42. 33 Gibson L1. Custom M36. Nice. CEO7. Breed Love Classical. 25 0018. This is a very classy crowd. I love it. Gibson 00, L00. My friend Peter Kane just got his hands on a new 00, L00. He had a few back in the day, and then he swaps guitars all the time. He's always changing things around, but he just got another old Gibson, and it's really nice. I got a chance to check it out at his last show. Okay. Oh, hey, Paul. Yes, 002H, Sunburst. Hey, that's my guitar. That's exactly what I have. That's funny. 78 Calling, signed by Bill. All right. Well, if we have time, I'll tell my secondhand Bill Collins story that I heard from Steve James. Although I don't know if we'll have time for that kind of nonsense. Coming from Broadstairs, England. It's late there, I know. Chuck's got a 0018, quadruple 18. Asheville, North Carolina. All right, well, let me get started here. I could look at people's guitar interests all day. Oh, not a coincidence. That's funny. We'll have to talk about that sometime. All right, well, let's get rolling here. Let me jump right in. I got these 3 things I want to tell you about. I'll have some tab up on the screen. And if you stick around to the end, I'll make sure there's a way for you to get your hands on a download of the tab as well. And someone mentioned that they're just starting with the Fingerstyle 5. And also, once we get through the main material, I'll also do a bit of a preview of some of the material I'll be covering this summer. If you've thought about doing the membership or you've been on the fence about it, I'm here to also, I'll take questions in general towards the end, just about technique or anything else we've been doing today. And then also I'll spend a little time just going over some of the material, the songs I'll be doing this summer, and answering any questions you might have if you've been thinking about doing the membership. And there's also some folks here who are members, so if you've got questions, you can get the inside scoop. Just put it in the chat and people will be happy to answer your questions about that. Okay. Oh, Daniel in Switzerland. Yes. Oh, you have one of those Atkins guitars. Yeah, the L36. I've played those over at the Music Emporium in Boston. They're really nice. They're kind of on my wish list, I have to admit. Okay, let's get rolling. Okay. So here's an overview. The 3 things we're going to talk about today are: 1, getting serious about your right hand. It's really easy to kind of, not really take the right hand coordination that seriously. It's like, it's kind of okay, so fine. But we're going to talk about some things you can do to dive in and really get that thumb and finger coordination tight, because that will make a huge difference. That might be the single most important thing we're going to talk about today. Second thing we'll talk about is how to create a basic arrangement of a tune. So a lot of what I teach is these instrumental arrangements of traditional blues. And basically you learn the tune, right? It's an 8-bar tune, it's a 12-bar tune. We're going to look at one of those tunes today. But what do you do once you've learned the tune? Or if you're singing the tune, like what do you do, once you can just basically play the verses, and that kind of takes care of the development of the song. But how do you basically frame the song so it sounds like something complete? And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about practicing improvisation. So, especially if you come to blues, if you come to acoustic fingerstyle blues from electric guitar, you probably learned how to solo, and then you get on the acoustic and you're playing usually fixed things that you memorize from tab. And so you lose that sense of being able to just sit down and play and just being able to, sort of be more expressive by, making stuff up. Now there's definitely a big road to travel between playing fixed arrangements and being able to just sit down and keep the thumb going and improvise whole choruses of the blues. But what we're going to look at today is just a couple of little stepping stones that you can try out for taking individual licks and starting to swap them around. I'm going to sort of just give you a little small experimental area to play in, just to work on getting the beginning ideas of how to improvise and what some of the tools are you need, which you can then expand to play on whole tunes. So that's the plan. Let's roll. So the first thing is this idea that I've been calling rudiments. If you ever watched a drummer practice, or you ever played the drums, or you ever saw anybody do this, in school or whatever, When a drummer is going to play on the whole drum kit, they don't start by practicing on the drum kit. They start by practicing on a practice pad. And they do these things called rudiments, where it's like, can they get the right combination of right and left hand, you know, da, 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 da. Basically, they concentrate all of the skills they need down to this one little place and just work on getting the coordination together in isolation before they spread it out over the whole kit. We have a similar thing we can do before we start worrying about the left-hand fingerings, before we start worrying about crossing strings, sliding, hammering on, or any of that stuff. We can break it down to just the rudiments, which are the thumb. In this case, I'm going to do steady bass as my example today. Right? If you're playing blues like this, all of that depends on this steady 4/4 bass. So once you're doing that, then the question is, how do you work out the coordination on top? So this page is just, this will look really simple, and you may be thinking like, oh God, I could do this in my sleep. But until you try it, you might not realize just how effective it is. So the first thing is to get that thumb going on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the first exercise is just to put a note on the downbeat. This is called a pinch. Anytime you're playing thumb and a finger together, we call that a pinch in the fingerstyle world. And my default is I'm using my index finger for the 3rd string, my middle finger for the 2nd string, my ring finger for the high string. So in this case, I'm just going to be playing in this first example. All right, so just a pinch on 1, and then 2 more bass notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then on the next example, I'm going to play a pinch on beat 1 and on beat 2, and then keep the bass going. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, we're isolating. We're not even worried about what's going on over here. This is just to get this dialed in. Next thing we're going to do is play on beats 1 and 3. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then try playing on 1, 2, and 4. So nothing on beat 3 except the bass. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can do these with a metronome, or you can count out loud, so you keep track of where the 1 is. The next thing we're going to do, so this is all just quarter notes, right? So just making sure that you can put quarter notes where you want to over the thumb and not lose track of what the thumb is supposed to do. Next thing is to play some 8th notes. So here we're going to play 1 and. So now we're playing in between the thumb. So basically the fingers, here's like a global rule for fingerstyle. Basically the fingers are either with the thumb or they're in between. Those are the only 2 places you can be using your fingers, with the thumb or in between. And that goes for a steady bass, an alternating thumb, even a more syncopated bass, a walking bass, a shuffle bass. You're either with the thumb or you're in between. Those are the only 2 places your finger can go. So here, in this first example on the 2nd line, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I'm going to play these as swing 8th notes. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4 and. And then we can do that on beats 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then we can play on 1 and 3 and. So you notice we're kind of doing what we did here, but adding in an 8th note afterwards. So you could also practice these this way. Like you could say, oh, okay, I'm going to play on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Just practicing going between quarter notes and 8th notes. And then here, we're playing on 1 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right? And again, you could practice that quarter notes and then 8th notes. And then here we've got 1 and then 4 and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and And those are just some exercises to start just getting that, really just wiring in that sense of the connection between the thumb and the finger. So here's just a couple things to remember. Your thumb is the rhythm section. It's telling you the tempo, it's telling you the chord progression, it's telling you the pulse. So it's really important that the thumb be solid because it is the foundation you're going to build everything on top of. And your thumb, in this case with the steady bass, plays all the strong beats, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then, like I was saying before, your fingers are either with the thumb on the 1, 2, 3, or 4 as a pinch, or they're in between on the ands. And that's it. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about syncopation, because this is what really makes blues sound like blues, is that when things are syncopated, meaning things aren't just really squarely on the downbeat, but a lot of times they start on an offbeat or on the and, right? So here's an example of what that looks like. We got 8 notes on top, but we don't play on 1. We come in on the and of 1, and I've highlighted that. So this first exercise here, this first measure sounds like this. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and now here we have a whole string of 8 notes, but we leave off the first beat, so we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? Now you can hear right away that's a really characteristic blues rhythm. Right? So there's a real utility to learning this kind of thing in isolation. If you can get that wired in with your thumb and your fingers so you can really play this without thinking too hard about it, you'll be able to like drop in some of these licks and you'll already have this part worked out. Here we're going to play on the and of 1 and the and of 2 and continue with the 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? And then here we've got on the and of 1, the and of 2, and the and of 4. So we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then we can also be leaving out notes on the and of 3, but starting on the downbeat over here, right? So we could have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and, or we could have 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and, or we could have all these offbeats here, right? On the and of 1, the and of 2, the and of 3, and then some 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Or finally, we could be on all the offbeats. Well, no, I guess we got a downbeat here. So we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now you can make as many different combinations out of these as possible, but here's, between these 2 pages, 16 different right-hand exercises to try. And this is just doing it on an E chord with an open string on the high string. So, you could do this with chords, you could do this, with notes on the 2nd string or the 3rd string. You could just start to try different things out. But the idea is just to get used to connecting up the thumb with the fingers in this way. So this way of isolating the rhythms is really useful. And when you get to an actual tune, one of the things you can do is look at the tune and just practice the rhythms first. So if we take this version of, this is just an instrumental, a simple instrumental arrangement of the 8-bar blues Key to the Highway. And it sounds like this. Right? Just the melody over a steady bass. But you can look at this in terms of what the rhythms you're doing and just look at it as this first measure here, what do we have? Well, that's just one of those exercises. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. So you can go through the tunes you're working on and abstract out what's going on rhythmically and practice that as a separate thing, just to get that coordination and to figure out what rhythms you need to do. So when you see a tricky measure like this, right? What's the rhythm? Right? So you can pull that out and make sure that you can do that before you start worrying about everything else. But let's look at this tune and just talk about this idea of arranging a tune. So if you know the song, this is the dilemma of playing instrumental music, is that you don't have lyrics. You don't, and I know some of you do sing and play, but if you are a guitar player who does not want to sing, then you need instrumental versions of what you're going to do. And even if you like traditional blues, which is basically a vocal kind of music, you can play these tunes instrumentally if you learn the melody. But then the problem is, what do you do so that it doesn't just sound like you're playing the same thing 5 times in a row? Because if you're singing, each verse is different because there's different words for each verse. But if you're playing instrumentally, you have this problem of like, well, I can't just keep playing the melody 5 times in a row. So if you learn this melody to play on the guitar, you've got 8 bars of music. But you don't have to be stuck with just those 8 bars. You're actually allowed to make up other stuff to go with that tune. And this is one of my favorite things to do. This is the idea of creating a vamp to go with your song. Now, a vamp follows a few simple rules, and I put them down here. Generally speaking, the vamp has the same groove and the same key as the song. So if you're playing a song in E, then you're going to probably put your vamp in the key of E. And if you're playing with a steady bass, your vamp is probably going to be played over a steady bass as well. The next sort of instructional rule for creating a vamp is that it basically, you want like between 2 and 4 measures that you can loop as you need to. Now, the idea behind a vamp is it's basically a way to either, set up and introduce the song, or a way to kind of tread water in the middle of the song while you get ready for the next thing that's going to happen. Or it's a way to kind of close out the song and give people time to, yourself if it's solo, or give the rest of the band if it's band, time to kind of improvise on their way out. But the original idea of the vamp sort of epitomized by say old Count Basie records, where the band vamps until the rhythm section vamps until the band is ready to come in. Well, the thumb is our rhythm section, so we're going to have just a couple of few bars that we can cycle around as long as we want to till we're ready to start the tune. And the vamp is also a nice way just to figure out what tempo you're going to play the tune at, just sort of help yourself settle in. And as far as what you're going to play for the chords are going to come from the key. And it's a good idea to start out trying from 1 to 4, or 1 to 5, or 1, 6, 2, 5. So either just going from 1 to 4, if you're in E, and then you're ready to start, or 1 to 5. If you want to get super fancy, 1, 6, 2, 6, 5. But I've written out one basic vamp that we can try here. just so you can, work on this and try it out. So here I've got a vamp that goes like this. So this is using 1 and 4, and it's using a steady bass, but it does have like a little bit of a walking bass in there. The bass is going like this, from the root to the 3, then to the root of the 4 chord, A, and then doing this little chromatic climb up. And so the bass is going like this. But on top, there are some chords. So it's going from an E7 chord on top. Here's the 5th and the flat 7 of E, up to an A, like that, at the 6th fret and the 5th fret. So, and then you let go and play this bass bit. So you gotta play this chord shape here, this E7 with a G in the bass, G sharp in the bass. Here's the 3rd, the 5th, and the flat 7. And then you go up to A, and your fingers can stay on the same strings. Let go and play this bass. And then the same thing, except now we're going to go down. Index finger is going to go down to the 2nd string. And we've got the open 3rd string to make the A7 chord, root, flat 7 and 3. And then same bass line. So that just you can loop around on, and as soon as you're ready, this is the version where it just goes around and around in a circle. Now, this is the version you would play when you're ready to hit the melody, and you would pause here, and instead of playing the bass line, you would play the pickup into the melody. So if we just played these 2 bars. And by the same token, when we get done with the tune, we have 2 choices here. We can either play the whole turnaround and then go into the vamp, or we can do something that's even slicker, which is you can finish the tune now before the turnaround. We can go right to the vamp in what would be bar 7. It basically replaces the vamp, it replaces the turnaround. And then once we've had like an 8-bar break from the melody, we can do the melody again. And so what this means is with just a vamp and the melody of the tune, you can create a little 5-step arrangement. It has, I call it the 5-step arc because it just kind of goes like this. You start with the vamp, you play the fundamental version of the tune, that basic arrangement that I just went through. You go back to the vamp, you play the tune again, and then you vamp out. And now, with just those 2 little pieces, we have the beginnings of what feels like a complete song. So it would sound like this. Start with the vamp. And then play the pickup into the tune. And then, instead of the turnaround, I'm going to go right into the vamp. And then I'll play the tune again. Back to the vamp. is the end of the tune. I could stretch it out. And I'm done. And that's my arrangement. Now that's sort of infinitely expandable once you have this basic idea down, because you could play if you were going to sing the song, you could put some accompaniment in the middle and you could sing a couple verses. Or if you were going to improvise on the song, you could take a solo somewhere in there. If you had like a sort of prepared conclusion to the solo called the shout chorus, you could stick that in there. You could build this out, but this is the basic idea. And really, if you can play the tune itself and you can follow those simple rules for coming up with a vamp, you can take any tune you're working on and start to apply this kind of arranging idea to it. And finally, let's talk about this third idea of starting to improvise on the vamp. So, ideally, like you'd want to be able to solo over the whole 8-bar chord progression, right? Right, but that's a lot of notes and it's a lot of ground to cover and there's a lot of moving parts to do all that. And what you really need to get there is some stepping stones. You need the idea of how do I start to build a vocabulary of licks, of like known things, and where do those licks fit into the bigger picture. So if we take a step back from trying to solo over the whole thing, we can start with this vamp and just practice putting in licks into the vamp. And so you can think of this as just like a little controlled experiment, right? Where we're cutting down the variables to just 1 or 2 spots in a 2 or 4 bar area and practicing swapping in licks there. So here's a slightly more embellished version of the vamp. It's the same idea. This E7 chord, that same voicing. This vamp in its entirety sounds like this. So it's already more like single note licks, right? But the chord shape is this one here. If you think of this E7 chord like this, and then you leave the high string open. So we've got the 5th and the flat 7 of E here, and the bass here. I'm sliding into that first double stop and going to the high string. I guess I'm actually fingering it this way. The index finger and the ring finger. And then the bass is over here, comes in on the 2nd beat with the G sharp. So I'm playing a triplet on top from the root to the flat 7 and back. And then I'm on an A7 now. Right? There's the A7, the root and the 7th. And then another triplet lick, and I'm really kind of spelling out a B7 here, B7 sharp 9. So on top, on the bass, I have, and here we have, so it's kind of licks on top, and then repeating in the 2nd measure, and then this little bass move. So this is going to be like the template for what we're going to do as far as swapping in licks. And again, if we were going to go into the melody, we would leave off this bass note stuff at the end and play like this. So what we want to do is say, well, if we're here, what can we do? Here's the spot that sounds like licks, right? And what can we do differently, right? And so we're going to keep the bass line going, but here's a different lick we could play in this spot. So instead of, we could do, so this is the exact same rhythm playing on the and of 3 and then playing on triplet on beat 4, but it's different notes. So this gets right back to the beginning with the rudiments. If you can play and 4 and 4 and then it doesn't matter if you're playing or, because it's going to feel the same over here. And if you know what the notes of the blues scale are that you're involved with, basically notes of E major and minor pentatonic, then you can start to fill that rhythmic space, the rhythmic contour of what we have here. You can start to fill it with different kinds of notes. So we can do that, and then when we get here, we can change up the bass line. It's because the bass line is going, and so instead of playing 3, 4, and we can play this triplet figure here. And so again, we're just picking a spot, beat 4, and changing what's available. So now we can do that. So now we've got two different things we can try, and we can go back and forth and pick whichever one we want. So it's not totally improvised, but you are kind of getting to wing it as far as, well, am I going to play or am I going to play? And you can reach for either one with confidence, knowing that they fill the same rhythmic spot. And so that's the moment where you're going to reach for something new. So here's a couple more examples. I wrote them out as, you know, the complete vamp for 2 bars, but the part that's highlighted is the swappable part, right? So this one, the second line, sounds like this. So it's a triplety thing here. Sorry. And then the next time, here's a new bass line, which starts actually in the middle of beat 3, but it gives you another option. So and then finally, here's another set of options. We got so some hammer-ons on the second string with the high string on top, and then another bass line where we're gonna go into the 5th here and then over to the root and pull off to the flat 7 to the 5. So I didn't play that quite right. So what you can do then with a page like this is you can just keep playing through the vamp over and over, swapping out what you're going to do. So you could say, well, the first time I'm going to play this and then this. And then the second time I'm going to play this, and then I'm going to swap in this bass run. And then I'm going to start here and play this bass run. And then I'm going to start here and play that bass run. And then I'm going to play this one. And then I'm going to start here and play that bass run. And then start here, blah, 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 blah. So like just going through these 3 examples, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different ways to play through the vamp, right? And so now you have a bunch of different options. You know 3 different ways to play the bass run. You know 3 different ways to play a lick on top. And yeah, like someone was saying, you don't have to go from licks on top to licks in the bass. You could flip it around, right? So you use this one over here and this one over here. You know, you could have... And so basically, now you're basically, you've created this you know, sort of little corral, right? This 2-bar thing where you know you're going to play the same thing at the top of every bar. But at the end of each bar, you've got this open space where you can drop in different options. So once you learn the options, you practice dropping them in. And that's how you will start to get the feel of improvising without feeling like you have to actually improvise yet. So these are the notes here. Keep this, if you're going to come up with your own moves, keep the same or a similar rhythmic shape for each lick, and then swap them in one at a time, and just slowly build a vocabulary of options that you can drop into this particular vamp. And that way, when you're starting the tune, you could start with just, I mean, there's so many ways you could build this up. You know, you could just start like this. And then you could put in the chord on top and start to change up the bass line. You know what I mean? So there's just a way you can, once you have a bunch of stuff, you can then take things away and slowly build it back up. So the vamp is really effective and really fun. If you're one of those people who's like, well, I know these memorized things, but how do I just sit and play? Like, simplify it, just get it down to a vamp, and then just practice playing the vamp and messing around with that. So those are the 3 main things I wanted to talk about. So let's just kind of recap here. And then we'll try to get to some questions. So you want to have some right hand rudiments from the song that you'll be learning. So you can apply this to any tune. I mean, you can go back and look at this tune and do it, but if you're working on something else, so create those right hand rudiments for yourself. Look at the rhythm of the melody and just abstract out the thumb and fingers and the rhythm and apply it to just a bass note and an open string. The next step is to create a vamp and make a 5-step arrangement out of just the tune and the vamp like we talked about. And then the third step is to come up with just a handful of swappable licks. And so, you know, again, you can just take these particular licks and start messing around with them. Or, you can start coming up with your own vocabulary as well. So I'm going to pause here with the recap because there were some questions, and I will take some questions, and then I'm going to go on and do the last part of what I sort of came prepared to talk about. So let's see if there are some questions back here, and if you have a question about anything I've been talking about, now is a good time to post it in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, and let me know if you're new here. I know a few people said so, but let me know if you've not been on one of these live streams before. Let's see. No, let's see. What do we got here? More guitars. Hey, Joel. Good to see you here. Chuck. Excellent. Let's see. A lot of good guitars. Let's see. I don't know if we got any more questions or not. Maybe I answered everything. Okay. From JL. Will the video be available? Yeah, the video will stay up until Thursday. So there'll be a replay you can watch for a few days. I'll have the PDF ready for download in a few minutes here when we get to the end of the Q&A. And let's see. Okay, another question from JL. Do you come up with these options by just playing through it and then writing them down, or do you consciously start with writing them down? That's a good question. For my own playing, I will do it by playing. I don't tend to write down arranging things for my own material. I tend to record stuff, and short ideas I just record in like the voice memos of my phone. So if I come up with a vamp and I don't want to forget it, I'll just record that bit of it and maybe like, you know, talk myself through it in the audio. Just be like, okay, you know, this one's at the third position and then I'm going over here and like this double stop is played here, because sometimes it's hard to figure out just from audio what you're doing later. If it's really tricky or there's like a fingering thing or a closed position thing, sometimes I'll make a little video of it again so I can just see what I'm doing. And then these exercises that I'm showing, I write this stuff out when I'm teaching. So this is all teaching material from the Fingerstyle 5 membership. So when I teach, you know, we do a new song every few months, and the first month we spend just on the tune. And so I teach what I call a fundamental version of the tune, and then we talk about how to embellish the tune. So there's a few levels of embellishment. Syncopation is a big one. Articulations like slides and hammer-ons and pull-offs, and then chord substitutions and bass lines, right? So, for example, if you're doing Key to the Highway, you want to learn the tune pretty much on the beat first. And the bass just sticking to the basic chords. Right? Now, if you want to develop that, you might start playing some slides. You might start to walk the bass line, or have some fills, some slides again. Hammer-ons and pull-offs. Right, so it's a little more elaborate at that point. And so I'll write stuff out because I want to make sure for myself that the basic version really is basic, because it's easy to think that what you're playing is simple, and then when you really break it down, it turns out it's far more complicated. And so you got to I try to really strip things out and make sure that there's a sort of a skeletal version of the song that still sounds like the song, but isn't going to have like weird little rhythmic things that are going to trip you up, because you got to learn the tune, you got to learn the bones first. So if I'm doing that to explain it, then I'll write stuff out. And the same thing with the vamp. I'll write out a vamp and I'll make sure that it's not too tricky. And then I'll write out a series of licks based on the rhythms, you know, so that I can look at them and see that all the rhythms kind of line up. So I'll write stuff out as a teaching tool, and, you know, these kind of PDFs, you know, we do one of these every month. The first month is about the tune itself. The second month is just about improvising, and I will basically go beyond the vamp. We'll go through the whole tune to talk about how to improvise on the whole song. Again, with like a model solo that's written out, and then, you know, some variations on those licks, and, you know, to build like a vocabulary of tunes, a vocabulary of licks. And then in the third month, we'll talk about arranging, and we'll take this 5-step idea a lot further and look at how to play like a 7-step version with a vamp, a fundamental version of the tune, a more embellished version of the tune, a solo, a shout chorus, maybe some stop time licks, and the whole thing. So it's all like, you know, built on these sort of levels where like someone more beginning can work on just the tune and the vamp, someone more advanced can work on, you know, soloing and all that kind of stuff. But there's enough, it's very, I think anybody here, and I see some people chatting about the membership, like it's very, you can kind of pick your own adventure, basically, like whatever level you want to work on the material, you can do that. Let's see. Must be some more questions here. JL, hope that answers your question. Oh, that would be cool to try to do this with the Van Morrison tune. Oh, my right hand muting. Oh, yes, that's from Mark. Sure, we'll talk about that. Yeah, and I saw someone else mention that too. I am doing it on purpose. I know not everybody's a fan, and I don't do it as much for alternating thumb, but I still do it. And my main reason is I want to get distinction between the melody and the bass. So if the thumb is wide open like this, you know, it sounds like the two things are competing with each other. And I really want to I want the thumb to feel like the groove, and I want the melody to feel like the front man of the band, you know? So what I'm doing is, I've got this part of my hand is what I'm doing the palm muting with. And my position, I don't rest my fingers on the face of the guitar. Nothing wrong with it. A lot of people do. You know, it's good enough for Pete Seeger and Stefan Grossman. You know, it's good enough for me. But that's just not what's comfortable for my hand. And this is all very personal because it's folk music, and you can kind of do what you need to do to get the sound you want, is my feeling. But for me, I like to have the palm resting on the bass strings right here, right where the strings meet the bridge. And I like to make sure that my thumb is almost straight out. And that comes from, I learned to play with a thumb pick, and that keeps your hand kind of sideways, your thumb kind of sideways, as opposed to like this. So all this is really flat. And that does kind of kill some of the sound, you know, like, you know, Lawrence Juber calls that the imaginary whammy bar, you know. But you know, what are you going to do? That's just the price of admission, that damping. So my thumb is like this, and my fingers I try to keep curled in more like this, like a claw, because then they'll miss each other. Like, you know, you see a lot of people, I see a lot of students finger pick like this, you know, they're kind of playing like this. I mean, like, I'm talking about really good people too, like songwriters and people who perform, and they're doing this kind of thing, but you can't get very much power that way because the thumb and the fingers are kind of bumping into each other. So I like to have the fingers resting on the strings like this, the thumb down like this, the palm touching the strings, and then scooching the index, middle, and ring finger back in. So this is curved, and you get this kind of shape with your, oops, that's out of the camera range. This kind of shape, right? Only down here. That's my personal jam. So, and then to find the palm muting spot, I'll just kind of slide my hand back and forth. If you go back far enough, you're past the bridge, and the string's wide open, and if you go up too far, you don't get anything. There's a sweet spot you can find, and where you'll still actually even be muting a little bit of the D string, but the top three strings will be wide open. And if I'm going for something like that, then my palm will come up off the strings. Then I'm back down. So there is a way to open it up, and that gives you more dynamic possibilities too, and more contrast. But contrast is the main thing that I'm trying to get, contrast between the bass and the melody. Let's see. Oh, here's a sort of gear question. Let's see. Highly recommended. I should sign up again, but there's too many things in the summer to do. Well, there's that. But, you know, you can pace it yourself. How do you transcribe your tunes to PDF? You know, I use Sibelius, which has been around forever. It was invented to compete with Finale, and I actually learned Finale first. They're both digital music engraving programs, right? But I write it out in Sibelius, and then I lay it out line by line in Canva, which is, you know, there's a free version and a paid version of Canva online, and my kids use it and for school and stuff. So, I mean, I learned to use Canva a while ago, and it's not the best, you know, probably using like, you know, a professional program like Illustrator would be better, but I'm fast enough in Canva now, and I can, you know, I can have, if someone else is going to work on stuff with me, I can it's easy for them to log in and tweak it too. So I do it like that. Oh, lots of questions here, man. Okay. Uh, where was that string gauge question? Oh, can you mix? Oh, here it is from Eric. Can you mix gauges on string set so that higher gauges on the low for loud? I mean, yeah, you could. I mean, the main thing, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't put too much tension on the top of your guitar. So just, you want to check before you put like a set of 13s, you know, the equivalent of 13 gauge, you know, medium strings. Before you start putting mediums on the low end, make sure the string tension isn't going to start to like, you know, do bad things to the top, right? Because especially you see those, like a lot of older vintage guitars, they've got that thing where this part starts to come up because the tension's too much over here. So just make sure. I don't ever go higher than a set of lights on mine, which is a 12 on top and I think a 56 in the bass. I like to have the balance, and I just, you know, but I mean, I have friends who go crazy, like just experimenting with string gauges. And I don't have the patience. I don't even like putting them on once. So I put on a set of strings and I use them until something breaks or until one of the strings starts buzzing, which is usually about a year. So I'm the wrong person to ask about experimenting with string gauges, but I know it can be done. And some people will really spend a lot of time working that out, and more power to them if it helps them play better. I generally tend to think it's over here. You know, it's like you want more bass, then dig in more. You can pull more sound out of the bass if you want. I mean, if you really want the top to be quiet and the bottom to be loud, hard. I mean, it's hard to, but if you concentrated and practiced it, you could get the thumb to really wail while the fingers were really light. Okay, that was kind of a smarty pants answer, but Jim, could I play Ides of March? I did play it on the way in, but I can play it again if you like. I was going to talk a little bit about the songs that are coming up this summer. Let's see. Oh man, there's a ton of comments here. Yeah, silk and steel strings, that you could do that too. These are comments. Okay, from Will. I've been working on Key to the Highway since you introduced it some months back. I bump up against getting bored with my sound while playing the tune. Thoughts on how to break through that wall? You know, this is interesting. Yeah, how to stay interested in what you're working on. I mean, for me, and I run up against this because, you know, I have like a repertoire of tunes that I perform, and I have, in the last year or two, have tried to kind of keep that repertoire sort of focused. So I have like you know, a couple of sets of tunes and maybe like another set's worth that I'll rotate in and out. But I'm trying to sort of just play those tunes and perform those as well as possible instead of always using up valuable bandwidth on trying to remember new words or remember new arrangements or whatever. So my solution to being bored with a tune is I have this, I wish I had a visual I could pull up, but I have a little pyramid that's like a parody. It's a riff on Maslow's pyramid of needs, you know, like the first thing is, can't remember all the details for Maslow, but my pyramid is just 3 steps. The bottom of the pyramid is the biggest piece of the pyramid, and it's the groove. And then the next level of the pyramid is the words. And the last part of the pyramid, the little triangle tippy tip on top, is the licks, like the guitar playing, the solos and all that. So the most important thing is the groove. So when I am like practicing for a gig and I'm like, oh, this song, you know, like I should really run over this song, but like I know the song, I don't really want to play it again. I'll think about the groove, right? So for example, if I was gonna, I mean, I don't perform key to the highway. But if I was going to play that song at a gig and I was like trying to brush up on it, I would start with I would strip it down to the groove. I'm like, okay, this is a steady bass song in E. So what do I need? I need the steady bass and I need the off beats. I need that shuffle groove. So I'm going to start with like these ghost notes on the ands. All right. So I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Like, what can I do with that? And I might even put on the metronome, you know, and just be like, okay, let's like, I want the metronome on 2 and 4. Well, now that's interesting because now I'm kind of trying to groove with the metronome and make sure the metronome swings. So already I'm finding this way more interesting than just playing a song I already know. Can I do something else with the bass? And still keep that offbeat going? So this is interesting. Now I'm actually sort of having a good time because I'm like, what can I put on top of this? I don't know. I'm not sure if anything will fit on top of that. It's hard. I'm trying to keep this going. Can I put a whole lick on top? I'm starting to rush. Okay, this is interesting. So can I keep that kind of bass? So, you know, it's sort of making the thing challenging, you know, trying to, you know, but really, I mean, just going back and focusing on the groove and then trying to play the tune with a sense of groove. And that's one thing. And then, you know, if you're a singer, then it's, you know, trying to make sure that you're kind of invested in the lyrics and that they mean something and that you can sing them with some kind of, you know, intention. And then like looking at where you can put the licks and things. I don't know if that totally answers the question, but that's my short answer is like to just sort of go back to the fundamentals about the tune, the basics of like, what's the groove, what's the feel, what am I trying to do with this song? And then just try to sort of revisit that. Someone had a question, my metronome, I use this Tama, I really like. And yeah, I just basically, in that particular case, I just slowed it down until it felt like it was where I wanted it to be, which was, I was at 37. Okay. And then I'm trying to hear it as 1, 2, 3, 4. This one actually has like subdivisions, so you can have a softer 1 and 3, and that can help you like as training wheels, and then you slowly dial it down. Right? So, yeah. Oh, PDF, yes. If you're already getting my newsletter, you don't have to sign up again. I will try to figure out how to send out the PDF to you that way. But if you are not, if you're just watching through YouTube and you haven't ever, if you're not on the mailing list for Fretboard Confidential, this will get you the PDF and you will get the newsletter. Go here and sign yourself up, and you can download the full 9-page PDF and work on all this stuff all you want. Let's see, a few more comments. I will stick around a little longer to try to answer some of these questions. And I will also spend a few minutes, if you like. I can demonstrate a couple of the tunes we're going to be doing this summer. Let's see. Let's see. Tip for improvising over a shuffle monotonic bass. Yeah, that is definitely a thing. It's basically the same thing, just doing rudiments, like making sure you can play quarter notes on top, eighth notes, different syncopating patterns, triplets. You know, it's just getting that kind of the shuffle going first, and then making sure you can coordinate your fingers with that. So I do teach one song with the shuffle bass in the membership. We do You Got to Move. I was playing with the steady bass though. So it's a fun groove. I don't really do it enough, but it can make a nice variation. Okay, Stuart. I know this is blues focused. How do you feel this crosses over to other music genres like country? Well, once you're doing the alternating thumb, it crosses over just fine, right? So if you're doing this kind of thing, which I teach a lot of alternating thumb too, and that's actually sort of my preferred groove for my own material. But if you can, you know, alternating thumb, just that kind of, because it basically is doing this 1 2 3 4 1 2 3, and putting in the backbeat in between. So I think it applies to that, certainly. Any of that sort of chicken picking, honky tonk kind of stuff, you can certainly transfer it pretty well. Let's see, what else can we get? Okay, so I put the PDF link in. Do I play harmonica with the guitar? Well, to paraphrase Roy Bookbinder, I can hardly play harmonica without the guitar. So I don't really. I love people who do. Like that, man, John Hammond is the king as far as I'm concerned for that kind of thing. I've seen him do it live. He does it on that live record from the 80s. I think he's just incredible at that. Yeah, feel free to go and use that link even if you're already on the mailing list. It just means you'll be on the mailing list twice, which is not a big deal. PDF link works like a charm. Good. Okay, well, so I'm just going to go ahead now and talk a little bit about how, if you like doing this kind of approach like I've been doing today, these are some ways that I cover this stuff inside the membership. So if you're like, on the YouTube channel, it's fine. I do a lot of this kind of stuff. But hang on, I'm trying to put this screen on. Here we go. But the membership is a little more organized, and it's not just sort of one-off lessons. So there's like, I don't know how many songs in there now. Like there's like there may be like, there's like 30 traditional blues tunes in there, and then like another dozen like original, blues compositions of mine that I used to teach with too. So like if you have any of that True Fire stuff I've done, like the New School or the Fingerstyle Factory, the original tunes are kind of like that. They're like jazzier explorations of how to play fingerstyle blues with like some more interesting chord changes and licks. But they're still basically blues. But basically tons of traditional tunes. And so for every tune, there'll be rudiments, there'll be a vamp or two, there'll be these swappable licks. So like you could figure all this stuff out for yourself, but if you want to just like go watch a lesson and download a PDF for, I Shall Not Be Moved, or Nobody's Fault But Mine, or 9-Pound Hammer, here's a country song for you. This stuff is kind of, it's there for you basically. The next thing is, I do one of these live streams inside the membership, basically 3 times a month. There's an hour-long lesson where I present the material so you can ask questions like we're doing right now. And like, if you're like, well, can you back up and demonstrate that thing again? Or what fingering are you using? Or why are we doing this? Like, there's always time for Q&A. There's also a really active community forum. Like most of the people you see posting in here are also, if they're in the membership, they're also over on our community forum. So when you have questions, there's always somebody there who's been like, oh yeah, I remember I worked on that tune and I had trouble with this, but I did this and that. Or, there's a video you can go watch about that. Like, it's a very sort of helpful and communicative gang of folks. I introduce a new song every 3 months. So in addition to this library of like 40 or 45 songs, there's also a new song every month. There's a lot of traditional tunes. There's a lot of contemporary tunes. And then also for the last couple of years, I've also been doing accompaniment for the traditional tunes and the lyrics. So if you're a singer and you want to practice singing these songs, you can also learn how to do my main focus is teaching this instrumental stuff because there's not a lot of places to learn that. And I feel like it's good to focus on that because there's a lot of people who don't sing who want to be able to play this kind of music, but a lot of people who do sing also. And so I'll talk specifically about, when I talk about arranging, we'll talk about how to accompany the tune. There'll be lyrics for the traditional songs. And also there's like, you don't have to know theory or how to read music, although obviously it helps to read tab. But there's a whole section on, there's a whole set of music theory lessons that are designed specifically for guitar players. And it's not anything crazy or advanced. It's just the basics so that you understand if I'm talking about like the third of a chord or the root of a scale, like it's just enough to get you caught up so you know what's going on. And then there's also a new section in there called the 6-week start. Because when you get into like a new website or a new set of lessons, sometimes it's hard to know where to begin. So I created this new 6-week prequel. I set it up to I started it back in, I think, May to introduce people to the stuff they need to know for this summer's song. But it's a good just sort of starting place for anybody coming in new. And it means you can go in and go through this 6 weeks that's really organized for someone who's new to the membership, maybe not new to fingerstyle guitar, but you could start as a beginner and, this would be a good place to begin. I've taken this longer set of lessons I did on YouTube called 6 Steps to Playing Fingerstyle Blues. And I've broken it down into like a whole set of smaller lessons so that each week you get like 10 minutes worth of instruction on that. So that you can just get this little like, oh, work on these 3 things this week. Okay, cool, I can do that. And then there'll be like each week like a set of exercises for right hand technique or for learning the fretboard. And then there's like a couple of videos you can watch where I talk about either groove or arranging or improvising. So there are like 3 specific assignments a week. So if you're trying to get started and you just need a little bit of structure, it's really different from just going on my channel or going on YouTube in general. It's like you can go through these 6 weeks and each week know like, okay, I got to watch these 3 things and then I'm going to work on these 2 things and there's some tab. You can just kind of go through. And once you've gone through 6 weeks, you've kind of got the habit of working on the stuff under your fingers and, then you can kind of go on and work on the rest of the stuff. And it's a good intro. So that's a nice place to start, and that's available as soon as you sign up to anybody who does sign up. And then, of course, the bottom line is the membership is $29 a month, but there's no annual price because there's no commitment. You can basically sign up for a month to kick the tires, check it out, and if you like it, you can keep going, and if you don't, you can leave. I don't want anybody sticking around who's not into it. And so, it's really very simple. It's like, here's the price. You want to keep staying, you want to stay and do it, you can keep paying. If you don't, you can split. And I like to think that it's everything you need to play better fingerstyle guitar. It's, it's repertoire. That's the main focus, right? It's like Why does anybody pick up the guitar? They learn songs, right? So there are a bunch of songs in there, not hundreds of songs, but dozens of songs. Because really, how many songs do you need? You don't need to learn every song under the sun. You just need to be able to play some songs. And so from the get-go, there will always be fundamental versions of the song and a basic vamp. So you can do this that we've done today with Key to the Highway with most of the tunes in the membership, have that kind of stuff available, right? So the idea is learn some songs, get your right hand organized, learn how to put together your own arrangements of tunes, get away from the tab by learning some licks, and eventually or ultimately learn how to improvise so you can just sit and play. That's really what it's for, you know? So you can ask anybody here who's already a member in the chat, and they can tell you about it. If you want to check it out, if you go to this website, fretboardconfidential.com, there's a whole page where there's some sample lessons you can look at. You can download some tab for some of the 8-bar blues that I teach, and just you can learn more, get more details about how it works. And you can always you can send an email to info@fretboardconfidential.com if you have questions, and we'll get you sorted out. So if you want to learn some tunes, I know it's summer. Summer's a hard time to do anything organized, but I like to think that there's some fun things that you can work on over the summer, and we'll be starting another traditional tune in the fall. But this summer we're going to do 2 of my original blues tunes. I'll play just a little bit of each one right now. The main song we're going to work on is a song called Ides of March, and you can see a performance of it here on the channel, but it sounds like this. It's basically a blues in E, but with some cool bass notes and chord substitutions. So it's a 12-bar blues with some extra stuff. And there's a simplified version of it you can learn that still sounds cool, but doesn't have quite as much of the chords and all that business. And then the other tune we're going to learn is a song called Solstice, which I've taught a little bit of like some of the licks from Solstice on the channel in the last week. And this is basically, I took this idea from Mississippi Blues. That whole idea, and turned it into this 16-bar blues. So the first 8 bars are like a blues, and the second 8 bars have this kind of extra chord turnaround thing going on. So that tune sounds like this. So they're both steady bass blues based on, blues in E, but with some variations, right? So there's a lot of traditional tunes that I've covered. Key to the Highway in E, Trouble in Mind in E, Nobody's Fault But Mine in E, and what's the other one that's a 12-bar blues? CC Rider, like a bunch of tunes like that. And so these 2 tunes are like, if you want to just sort of expand a little bit beyond the traditional scope of things and learn how to do some of those walking bass line, some of those chord subs. The tab for Solstice, the original tab is posted in the traditional song library. The revised and updated, this is a song I taught almost 5 years ago now. So I'm going to post an updated tab for it. And yeah, I'm going to teach both songs. The original version, the original lessons for Solstice are in the library. The main focus is going to be on Ides of March, the first song that I just played. We'll have 3 lessons a month on that for 3 months. For Solstice, we'll have a total of either 2 or 3 lessons, depending on, I'm not sure how much material there's going to be. So we'll have 2 or 3 live streams for Solstice. But they'll still be, those will, I'll go through all the material in the live stream. The live streams get archived, so you can always rewatch them. It's not just like you have to be there live. It's like on-demand replay. So I should have mentioned that. You can go back and watch any of the replays you want from the last 5 years. The live streams stay up, along with short videos where I explain specific parts of the tune and all the tab, which is continuously downloadable. So I'll be teaching both of those songs, but the primary emphasis and most of the detail will be going into Ides of March, but we'll also be going over Solstice, and a lot of the same stuff will apply because the first 8 bars of Solstice are an 8-bar blues. So really, when it comes to the improvising part, it's this part. So what do you do over those chords, right? So we'll look at that. And then the approach, the idea is basically every song kind of gets run through this process of, fundamental version, embellished version, vamp, how to arrange the tune, how to improvise on the tune. So the other mission, besides just learning vocabulary, learning technique, is learning this process of like, how do you learn a tune? How do you take it apart and put it back together? I've talked elsewhere on the channel about this idea of the horizontal 3-step, right? How do you isolate the thumb, isolate the fingers, and then put them back together? Because that's the other big challenge, is just learning how the song actually goes and being able to memorize it. So the idea here is like to develop a process for learning songs so that you can be your own teacher for this stuff. I mean, I always say, like, the ultimate goal of the membership is for you to not need the membership. Like, you should be able to go off and be like, great, I got what I needed. I'm going to go work on this stuff. You might want to stick around because the community's fun and the forum's nice, and the live streams, you can still get your questions answered, and there's always new material being introduced. But really, this process, it's not rocket science. I go through the same process for every song so that you can gradually wrap your head around the idea of like, oh, it's not that complicated. I just got to do this, 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 and this. And that's how I'm going to learn these things. So that's the idea. All right. Well, thank you all for sticking around a little extra. If there's any other questions, I can stick around for another minute or two and answer them. But if you'd like to learn these new tunes, you want to learn how to get your technique dialed in, you want to get some traditional tunes under your hands, and you want to start improvising, check out the Fingerstyle 5 at fretboardingconfidential.com. We've been doing it for almost 6 years now, and folks seem to be enjoying it and getting a lot out of it. So if you like to play fingerstyle blues, it might be the thing for you. It's a good place to find out all about those kinds of things, and we'd love to have you there. So check it out, and I'll play a little bit more of Solstice, and then we'll be out of here. Thanks for being here. right, thanks so much for being here. The new song starts this Thursday on the 10th is when we're going to start working on Ides of March. So check it out, join us there, and I'll see you around the internet.